welcome back to my channel. My name is Molly. I'm a mum here in the UK of 2 kids. My husband and I have a biological little girl, and more recently we brought home our son through the UK adoption process. Today's video is going to be about panel. Both panels, approval panel and matching panel. Panel is the most exciting part of the assessment process. It is the milestone that marks the end of all the assessment appointments, pretty much all of your compulsory training, and the end of your social worker visits to your home and your visits pretty much to your agency until family finding begins. My husband and I went to approval panel in the springtime, and it was virtual via Zoom, so our experience will be a little bit different, but the format of panel and what was discussed in panel is very much the same as every other panel that you will go to. When you've been through the UK adoption assessment process and your social worker has compiled what we call your prospective adopters report or your PAR, this then goes to panel. This is what approvals panel is. So this is where you are a prospective adopter and you are hoping to become an approved adopter, which means that you can then go on to family find and be matched with a potential little one. Approvals panel is normally put on by your local authority or your voluntary agency, whichever one you've decided to adopt through. It normally has a panel chair, a minute taker, experienced social workers. It will probably have trustees of that agency or other workers from different services within that local authority. It might have a medical advisor, and it will probably have some experienced adoptive parents sitting on it too. The aim of approvals panel is for panel members to read through your report and compile a small list of questions for yourself and your partner if you're adopting jointly, to ask you about your experience, your life experience, and how that will impact you as an adoptive parent. It sounds terrifying, and as a prospective adopter it can be, because this is the moment where you are going to be told yes, you can become a parent, and all your hard work has built up to this moment, and you have to go and sit and be asked a lot of questions by people you probably haven't seen before. But your social worker should prepare you well ahead of approval panel. So like I said, our approval panel was via Zoom. It was a very strange experience, but our agency handled it so well. Our social worker prepared us well ahead of time. We actually knew what questions we were going to have ahead of panel, and I don't think this happens in every single local authority or voluntary agency, but the evening before, our social worker did send us through a list of questions that panel were already going to ask us, so that we had the evening to practice our answers and gather some notes together for the next day. The next morning for us was panel. It was very strange doing it from our dining room, but we logged on to Zoom and we were entered into a virtual waiting room. We were greeted by the minute taker, who just said, "Welcome Molly and Sam, welcome to your approvals panel. The adoption panel are just making some notes, and then we will invite your social worker in for some questions." So we waited in the waiting room for 10 minutes, and if you're doing this in person, you would be sat physically in a different room, normally whilst your social worker goes in to answer some questions on their own. Panel do tend to ask your social worker a few questions. Our social worker was in there for 10 minutes, and that is just so that they can gain their professional opinion on how it's been working with you and how they envision you as adoptive parents, and whether or not they think you are suitable. After our social worker had been questioned, myself and my husband were then let into a Zoom meeting. At this point, if you were in person, you would be walking into panel. You would normally be greeted by panel members. For us, there were 9 members there, a very big mix-up of the chair, secretary, adoptive parents, I think a medical advisor and a trustee on the board of the agency. They were very welcoming. We sat in our dining room and were welcomed by the chair. She was absolutely wonderful. Normally what they do in panel is they start off by highlighting your strengths in your prospective adopters report. So the chair really took her time. She spent about 5 minutes summarising our report and the discussions that panel had, and told us why they thought we would be good adoptive parents, why they're really pleased that we've chosen to adopt, and after that she gave us a heads up that they would then be asking us our questions. In total, we had about 8 questions to answer, and these were very specific to us. They revolved around our daughter, previous mental health, our marriage, childcare support network. There can be a huge wide range of topics. After a very intense but fast half hour, we were then put back into the waiting room to wait for panel to deliberate whether or not they wanted to approve us as adopters. They'd spoken to our social worker, they'd had a really good detailed conversation with us, and we were sat along with our social worker in the virtual waiting room awaiting our result. If you go in person, again, you would be sat waiting with your social worker, ready to be welcomed back into the panel meeting room. At this point, because it was virtual, our social worker did send us a text just saying, well done guys, you did great. And I think my heart was racing. I text something back like, I'm so ready for a bottle of wine. And then she did text back saying, you did absolutely brilliant, you're going to be celebrating, let's just wait and see what they say. And we were then welcomed back in, not to a full panel. We were welcomed back just by the chair, the minute taker, and there was us and our social worker there. And instantly she congratulated us, told us that it was a unanimous yes. She then went through all of the reasons that they said yes, why they thought, again, we'd be good adoptive parents from our answers. She was so wonderful, and I hope that everybody's panel experience was just as wonderful. She logged off, and we just had to wait for our agency decision maker letter 10 days later. After panel, normally the panel minutes along with your prospective adopters report is sent to what they call the agency decision maker, or the ADM. Every local authority and voluntary agency should have one of these, and it is basically a person responsible for reviewing everything and just giving the final yes, I'm happy for this couple or this single adopter to be approved. We then, of course, had big celebrations. We went and got our daughter from nursery. We went on a long walk. We had a bottle of champagne and a takeaway because we were in lockdown. We couldn't go out and celebrate properly. But it was just the best feeling knowing that we were approved and that we could officially then go to matching panel for our gorgeous little boy. Once you become an approved adopter, normally that is where your official family finding will begin. Sometimes it happens before approvals panel, sometimes it happens after. But once you've been through family finding and you have found your prospective little one or little ones, you will then be getting ready to go to matching panel. Now, matching panel is a little bit different to approvals panel. It's very much the same format where you go into a room with lots of different panel members. However, this will not be with your local authority or your voluntary agency unless you are adopting within the same local authority. For us, this was with our little man's local authority, so our experience was incredibly different. Again, prior to this matching panel, we had a really good Zoom chat again with our social worker about potential questions that we could be asked at matching panel. So we didn't get the questions in advance this time, and that is much more like a normal panel, whether approvals or matching. We had a really good chat with our social worker about some of the areas that they may ask us on. Fortunately for us, our social worker had done a matching panel with this local authority previously, so she kind of knew how they would work. She's had some experience of what questions other families were asked, and she was able to give us a really good heads up and some good preparation around this area. Again, for us, matching panel was on Zoom because it was within the lockdown period. So we logged on from our dining room and were put into a virtual waiting room. We were welcomed by the minute taker who said welcome to our social worker and welcome to us. They were just waiting for panel to get their notes together, make sure everyone was present before letting us all in. In matching panel, there tends to be a bigger presence of people. So you normally have all of your panel members, which again is a big mix up of people from children's services, the chair, the minute taker, adoptive parents, medical advisors. It could be other social workers in our experience. You will also be present with your social worker, but this time our little man's social worker and his family finder also attended panel, and we very much acted as a united team because we all wanted this match to proceed and be approved. We were welcomed into panel by the panel chair. It was very formal. She was very formal. She did not start off by highlighting any of our strengths. We just went full in to panel questions, and we were given quite a lot of questions. I think that panel had prepared around 12, but in the end we got asked around 18, and that is because they were asking things off the back of our responses. It wasn't anything scary. The questions were very easy to answer. They were a lot about managing conflict between parenting two children, how we feel about contact, how we feel that we can promote little man's life story work, etc. It was things that you would expect from matching panel, but it did go on for a good 45 minutes. Our social worker also got asked a few questions. Little man's social worker got asked a couple of questions about how she felt about the match. Family finder got asked to explain the family finding process and why she had chosen us to go forward as little man's adoptive parents. And so we were very much a team. We were all working off of each other, supporting each other's answers, which was really great to see. After we'd been asked all of the questions, nobody actually went back into a waiting room. I believe that should have happened, but the panel chair just said that she was very impressed and she asked the panel there and then if anybody had any objections, which was horribly nerve-wracking for us, but they all put their thumbs up. She then congratulated us, obviously said it was a unanimous yes. She then proceeded to highlight our strengths and apologised that she hadn't done this in the first place. But panel, before we'd gone in, had obviously had a discussion and taken some notes about why they think that we would be a really good match for little man. We then left panel, we spoke to little man's social worker, who said congratulations, his family finder as well, and our social worker phoned us straight away, screaming, just so happy. And I think I was crying my eyes out at this point, and me and my husband were just on cloud 9. Again, we had to wait for the agency decision maker's formal letter basically approving the match. This took about 10 working days afterwards. It is very rare that the agency decision maker does not agree with panel. Our social worker said that she's never seen a case where the ADM hasn't agreed. After matching panel, this was the most overwhelming emotional day. We got to phone our family and tell them that they were going to have another grandchild, that they were going to have the first grandson, they were getting nephews. And it was just the most incredible experience. We went and picked up our big girl from nursery. She was not aware of little man by this point, so we set up lots of balloons and presents from him around the fireplace. She came home, and because it was locked down, we had a party, the 3 of us, but we did order a takeaway and, of course, have some champagne. At this point, we did also announce our adoption to our wider family and friends network. We were just spending the day going through incredibly supportive and the most wonderful messages. I want to end this video on some of my top tips for panel, and top tips in getting ready emotionally for panel as well. Number 1 is panel are not there to trip you up. I genuinely had such anxiety and nightmares about panel, thinking that they were going to fail us, that they were trying to trip us up, and that is not the case. These people want you to adopt. These people need you to adopt. They really want to see you succeed, but they have a professional duty to ensure that your social worker has done everything that they need to do, and they have a professional duty to make sure that you are fully committed to adoption and are suitable and ready to adopt. Second tip is, before panel, have a really long discussion with your social worker about their previous experiences of both approval and matching panel. Ask them for areas that other families have been asked around, and ask them for their professional opinion on what areas of your prospective adopters report that they think you will most likely get asked about. If you have had challenges in your life, or you've maybe not made some of the best decisions, or you've had some family troubles or relationship troubles, whilst you may see these as weak, they actually may play in your favour as adoptive parents. If you have learned a lot from them and had to grieve things, you will be able to relate to a child more. However, panel will want to query you on these areas, and maybe just explore in some more detail why they happened, how they affected you, and how they will aid you in empathising as an adoptive parent. Tip number 3 is, if you aren't being given questions beforehand, just prepare some general questions. You can find examples of general questions all over social media. Within the UK adoption community, your agency or your local authority should be able to give you some basic ones. Make some notes. Me and my partner definitely, before we even got our questions for approvals panel, and because we didn't have any questions for matching panel, we made a Word document with lots of key notes. We just had an open chat about them just so that they were fresh in our head. We did that the night before and the morning of, just so that we felt fully prepared to answer the more obvious questions that were going to be asked. Tip 4, get an early night. It is so hard when you are so nervous and so anxious, but get some sleep. Get lots of sleep the night before, because it's such an emotionally draining day. If you are struggling emotionally with your nerves or your anxiety for panel, speak to your social worker. This certainly was the case for me. I spoke to her regularly about how worried and nervous I was, and she was incredible at reassuring us. I hope that video has been insightful to some of you that are going ahead with panel, approval or matching. Good luck. Enjoy it. We look back on our panel experiences as very positive, very exciting. They are a huge part of the adoption process here in the UK, and you should be so proud of yourself if you've got to panel and you've been approved or matched, because it takes such a lot of courage and such a lot of hard work to get there. It really is the end of the assessment process, and it's such a pivotal time, because it's a time when you're going to be told that you can be a mum and dad, and we're going to be told that you are actually a mum and dad to a real human. It's the most exciting thing ever. If you are interested in the UK adoption assessment process, please check out my video about that. I've gone through the different stages, stage 1 and stage 2, what was involved in a lot of detail so that you can have a realistic picture of what to expect from that. I will be doing some videos on family finding, and I've already done some videos on introductions as well. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos. I really hope that you have enjoyed watching this one. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel as well. Thank you guys. Bye.